Sabrina's 70s comic, issue 15. The story starts out with things throwing themselves around Veronica's house. Sabrina thinks the place is haunted too, and she goes to Ambrose for help. He goes to the house with the excuse that he's a student of the occult, and Veronica's father says he's collected many rare examples on ancient cultures. So Ambrose finds out that the problem is the Viking helmet, the favorite helmet of Walric the Weird. Something I was disappointed to learn about is that real Viking helmets didn't have those horns on them begging people to grab a hold of them. So Sabrina's world sure is different from ours. Ambrose recognizes the helmet immediately and calls out the ghost by name, causing him to show himself. Walric tells him to get his hands off his helmet and reveals that he knew him earlier and never liked him. It turns out he's a witch and not a ghost. And Walric scares Veronica running after her with an axe. Sabrina asks Ambrose if he can stop this. I mean, they're all witches. Shouldn't they have stopped Walric in his tracks with a single spell right away? Wouldn't he just freeze him in ice instead of thinking to summon Helga? At least that was creative. So his abhorrent admirer scares him away, and Veronica's father is fine with losing the helmet because it was worth it. I liked that Veronica's father showed up, and his personality was about something other than being a rich snob to Archie. Though now that I think about it, it is pretty logical that he'd think that a clumsy idiot who's actually got some jerk moments instead of always being the nice guy he claims to be, isn't good enough for his daughter. He really isn't. In the comedy page, Sabrina asks Harvey if he's the one who set up the swimming pool, and she asks what he put in Hilda's air mattress, as it's floating uncontrollably. How does that make sense? He's not a witch. It would make sense if it was a potion ingredient, and he just got it from Sabrina's house. In the next story, Harvey shows Sabrina a bouquet of flowers doing a magic trick. Honestly, I don't see why a witch would be bored at magic tricks, because they wouldn't know how a mortal would manage to do a magic trick. I can imagine that doing a magic trick will be much harder than just pointing and doing magic for real. So Hilda should be just as impressed as Sabrina, grudge or not. Sabrina calls out Hilda, saying that Harvey's been studying all week for magic tricks. He decides to show her a disappearing coin trick, and she wants to leave the room because she's not impressed. After all, that is pretty lame and pointless compared to what witches can do. Then Harvey wants to pull a rabbit out of the hat. Why is it always the same 3 magic tricks in the media? I wonder if magicians are still doing those tricks, or if they gave up on them decades ago for being so cliche. And I'm sure they've completely given up on the sawing a person in half trick, because every TV show told us how it worked. It's so sweet of Sabrina to be like this. She insists on Hilda seeing the trick, and since she's so bored, she turns the rabbit into a monster. Sabrina unzaps that and lies to him, and he decides to give up on magic tricks, blaming himself. Well, there are better jobs he could get. In the next story, Hilda wakes Sabrina up by magically moving the bed, but then Hilda reacts to the frying pan sending fried eggs out of it, and she blames Ambrose for it. Hilda says it's gotta be Della, and she's probably punishing Sabrina for being nice. Why does Ambrose not think Della would work this way? I mean, it's true that she hasn't done this before, but she's still pretty evil. He summons a spell to teleport it to her. Just like how Sabrina teleported Della to her just by sending her vibrations. Really? Anyone can just summon the head witch to them? Maybe it's not anyone. Maybe it's only because Della's apparently best friends with Hilda, and so she visits Sabrina's family way more than you'd expect. She just has Della's phone number. I guess it's balanced by the fact that if any random witch summoned Della and she was mad at them for it, she'd severely punish them. So people only summon witches in an extreme emergency. Like, what if she was in the bathroom right now? It'd be common courtesy to give them a text message first, or a phone call to warn them. She shows up and gets slammed into the wall and asks who booby-trapped her landing pattern. Hilda says that she thought Della had been zapping them. Some karma because she doesn't behave well, and Della denies it, which Ambrose foreshadowed. But because Hilda insisted on mentioning Sabrina being nice, Della plans on punishing her for it. Then she gets hit by fried eggs. I love the intriguing mystery over who's casting the spells. We haven't seen Zelda so far, but that wouldn't be her. I think the writers just aren't interested in using Zelda. It should be explained that she's on vacation. There's no excuse for not fleshing out Zelda's personality, not just dismissing her as boring to use. Della says that the Blue Baron has to be back. He's witchcraft's worst practical joker, and the bane of her existence for 4,000 years. Let me get this straight, she's mad at a witch for being an evil witch, like she tells witches to be. And yet she discourages Sabrina from being nothing like him. What did you think was gonna happen? Isn't he just doing what she encouraged him to? She says that his powers are just as strong as hers. She says he'll just have to put up with his tormenting them until he gets tired of it and moves on. Won't he never get tired of it? She is such a weak head witch. I mean, can't she just zap him over to her and then have the spell kill him at the same time? His powers are just as strong as hers, but that shouldn't stop her from just warping to him and using a knife. Like, show some authority, even if it does sound harsh. She's an evil witch. I never felt like Della was very progressive. Even if she's a female head witch in the 70s, she's still all bark and no bite. I can imagine the only reason he'd be tormenting Sabrina in this comic would be to punish her for being good. It's not like he has a personal vendetta against Sabrina's family, but that's what I'm assuming. Normally I'd assume she'd only be widely discriminated against because she's half witch, but that hasn't even been confirmed yet. We cut ahead to someone who's dressed funny asking Sabrina and Harvey how to get to a place. Then he says the directions himself and laughs. That was barely a joke. It was a surprise, that's it. Then as she realizes that must be the Blue Baron, he appears behind a tree and frames Sabrina for splashing Archie with water. So this story is going to be about cruelly mistreating Sabrina over and over again for no reason. Why can't it be Reggie instead of her? That's what it's going to waste its creativity on? At least Della gets sprayed with a hose too. It'd be better if she was the only one being bothered. Sabrina wastes time telling him to get lost instead of freezing him in time, or in literal ice. It shouldn't matter that he's more powerful. All any witch would have to do is point at him before he can react. She'd end the plot right away. He's not even more powerful, he's just as powerful. Veronica gets hit with the water balloon, and then Sabrina brainwashes Ethel into falling in love with the evil witch. Yeah, I've already forgotten his name. Oh yeah, the Blue Baron. That sounds like a pirate. He's not even blue. Why does the Blue Baron call Ethel a beast, when according to the witch standards of beauty, she'd be insanely beautiful? That'd be a great callback to that weird lore. Using it more than once would make me take it seriously more, because I get used to it. But being good looking doesn't guarantee a person wanting them. I guess he was just put off by her being a mortal who came on too strong. Maybe he thinks only witches are allowed to be ugly. He warps away from Ethel, as there is yet another of the same joke at her expense, instead of fleshing her out. And the story ends with Della saying she's proud of Sabrina. In the comedy page, Sabrina hears a special bulletin from Witch's headquarters coming out of an old-fashioned radio. She tells Hilda that her broom's been recalled because of defective parts. Huh? So, because it can fall apart easy? Wouldn't a single spell prevent that? Improving upon it? And what took so long? It's just a broom. She could fly on anything because of her magic. In the next comedy page, more like half page, Hilda tells Sabrina that for her birthday, she's entitled to make one wish. Wait, I thought she got a lot more wishes than that. I thought she was entitled to 3 wishes last time. Maybe she asked for too many wishes last time. I don't even know which birthday this is. That'd be effort. Sabrina thinks she's being clever by asking for a magic wand that'll give her anything she wants. She is that magic wand. She doesn't even look like she's joking and knows Hilda wouldn't grant the wish. I think the reason Hilda says that she's gonna grant her a wish for a gift when Sabrina could zap up anything she wants is that it's to be nice to her, because she's her aunt. It's more like, you can ask me for whatever favor you want. It spares her the effort of zapping it up herself. And she's better at magic than her, I guess. In the next comedy page, a guy on a date with Sabrina stops the car and lies that they're out of gas, and Sabrina's experienced enough to not believe him. I thought she only ever dated Harvey and Archie. She says it's a good thing she hooked up the special trailer, and the story ends showing the gas in the car being refilled. I guess the story was happening during a breakup. Then the final story, Jughead says that every time Sabrina comes to a zoo, the bats seem drawn to her. It sure is an unfortunate genetic quirk of witches that they all have that problem with their DNA. Archie asks if he's implying she's a vampire, as I wonder why she's smiling in the next panel instead of hearing him. Maybe she did hear him and thinks it's amusing how he came to the wrong conclusion. Somehow, Jughead thinks nothing bad ever happens to Sabrina, while most kids have accidents. A lot of bad things happen to her, but it's because of magic mishaps that he wouldn't know about. Veronica says she's a little strange, but is fortunately smiling. Sabrina avoids a baseball flying towards her head as she kneels down to pet a kid who wasn't there a minute ago. The baseball lands in Jughead's mouth and Sabrina feels sorry for him. He says she ducked, and somehow she's confused and surprised. Veronica confronts her about how lucky she is, and Jughead thinks she's not from this world. Betty keeps playing the skeptic. And then Sabrina avoids some water from a hose while the rest of them don't. Jughead was being forced before, but this is more compelling. She realizes she has to arrange to get hurt a little bit in an accident that could happen to anyone. Naturally, she's too afraid to let herself get hurt by the runaway tire. So it bounces and lands on Jughead's foot and breaks a window. And the story ends unresolved, as Archie's being carried by Sabrina, saying that he's found the only place in town where a guy can be safe. Logically, the story would end with Sabrina just erasing the memories that made them suspicious of her. The first story is about Veronica's house being haunted by, not a ghost, but an invisible witch who was mad at his helmets being stolen by Veronica's father, because he's an ancient relic enthusiast. So Ambrose recognizes them and gets him to leave by summoning his abhorrent admirer of all things, reminding us of Ethel in the process. So no wonder Sabrina got the idea in that story. She was remembering this. The second story is about Harvey boring Hilda with the most cliche magic tricks ever. But she's not even bored because they're cliche. Eventually, she uses magic to scare him out of it. This could have just been a comedy page, because nothing interesting happened until this point. Then there's a story about Sabrina's family being tormented by the Blue Baron, a witch practical joker who's just living proof that Della's evil witch encouragement is just stupid. Eventually, Sabrina makes Ethel scare him away after she's frustratingly framed for his jokes more than once. It's exciting to see a witch antagonist to give Sabrina, and her more deserving aunt, a hard time. And I loved the mystery over who it was. But still, you'd think the Baron would have just been frozen by a single spell. If Della hates him, then it wouldn't matter if he was just as powerful as her. She would have frozen him in time when he was asleep and killed him, or at least taken away his powers. The final story is Sabrina's friends realistically lampshade as she always avoids getting hurt in accidents because of her powers. So Jughead thinks she's not of this world. That was pretty easy though, a lot of people don't get into accidents. And that's really it, because she can't make herself get hurt on purpose. If the comic was dark, she'd want to do that.